me just hit the unmute.
All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming out today for our April presentation. It's a few weeks later than usual because we wanted to make sure we could get Dan and fit into his schedule. And then the timing just worked out perfectly with our latest space endeavor. So really, it was meant to be. It was in the cosmos, and here we are. I'm Dina Viviani. I'm a programming librarian, just with a few housekeeping announcements. If there is a need to evacuate the building, the door on my right, your left, is our closest exit. For anyone using a hearing aid, you can turn on the induction loop option. And I want to, and along those lines, I want to make sure that when we have time for Q&A at the end, please wait for this microphone to reach you. I'll walk it around so that everyone can hear and participate. And turn off your cell phone ringers, please, so we do not disrupt the speaker. And I want to make sure to thank the Friends of Brighton Memorial Library for sponsoring this series. The members of the Friends who are on this committee, we are reading a lot to get ready for the next season because we have 2 programs left for this season. All of the books are checked out for today, for May, and for June. So if you would like to read any of those titles, please stop at the information desk. They can place a hold on any titles for you. And do pick up one of our program brochures for April. We've got another program in here tonight that is a taste of previous Rochester international film festivals. So we'll have some short international films. We also have some book discussions coming up. And we've got the dates for the Friends book sale on here. Thursday, April 28th through Monday, April 27th, held at 12 Quarters Presbyterian Church. So please make sure to stop over. What did I say? It's the wrong glasses. These aren't my close readers. April 23rd through April 27th. 3s look like 8s when you're not wearing the right glasses. But the real information and the real dates are on the April program brochure, so please pick one up over there. And now I want to give a brief introduction to our speaker. Dan Schneiderman is the Community Engagement Manager at the Rochester Museum and Science Center. As part of his work, Dan leads the RMSC STEM Ambassador Program, coordinates adult programs, and connects RMSC to the wider community. Dan previously coordinated Rochester's 2024 solar eclipse efforts as the Eclipse Partnership Coordinator at the RMSC, and I can't believe that was already 2 years ago now. I have the memories coming up on my Facebook feed, and it's like, time just keeps on going. So with that note, here we have Dan to talk about Orbital. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that wonderful introduction. I have to say, you also said the 3 most dangerous words in my family: library, book, sale. I come from a family who, my grandmother was actually a librarian at the Winton branch, and the amount of books in my family from just that one library's book sales is a bit. So welcome. I could not have asked for better timing. I've had to rewrite this talk quite a bit in the last week. We literally could not have gotten better timing, and it is insane because when you, I'm wondering, who read the full book? Wonderful. Don't worry if you haven't read the full book. I won't really be spoiling anything in this presentation. I will say the start of the book does mention an Artemis launch on the way to the moon, and I'm like, oh, I had to reread this book and flip through and be like, what are all the references that now apply? But we'll get to that. And as it was mentioned earlier, it is wild that it's been 2 years since the 2024 total solar eclipse. And even crazier that the Artemis astronauts, almost to the day, got their own total solar eclipse. I will say, when you're in space, you have absolutely no worry about clouds. But that's a whole nother thing. And I guess at some point, I should probably arrange a talk to talk about the upcoming eclipse, because I'll be in Iceland representing the region. But that's a whole nother talk. So I did want to do an initial thoughts from all of you who read the book. It was admittedly not the book I was expecting. And the more and more I read it, the more I realized, yeah, this is a really polarizing book. It is quite accurate to what a day on the life is, or at least a fair amount of it is. Maybe a bit more maudlin than what you expect the astronauts to think about, but still quite an enjoyable read. It's a really nice kind of slice of life in space with a lot of philosophy thrown in. Did anyone have any other thoughts? I know I'm throwing this at you.
That's
to do
okay.
with
No,
the
we got
mic.
the mic.
No worries if not. Hopefully we also have thoughts at the very end too.
Well, just that I heard the Artemis people talking in a similar vein, talking about looking at the planet from a distance in vast space and kind of sending out a little call like, basically, why can't we all get along? This is all we have. And there's a lot of that in the book of, looking at it and how beautiful it is, and at the same time how we're wrecking it at the same time. So.
The fragility of the pale blue dot. It is often talked about by astronauts. I'll get to more of that even later. But there was a debate I had when rewriting this presentation of, do I update my images from, you'll see later on, I have one of the photos from 1972 of Earth. The photo was called Pale Blue Dot. And then I'm like, there's this new image called Hello Earth. And I almost replaced it. I'm like, so close. But I wanted to, pay homage to the original, which still is such a strong memory for me of just learning about the images, hearing those stories. It's incredible. Well, let's dive in. I did, as there was a lot of focus about Apollo in the book and people's memories of the moon landing, I did want to mention there's a strong connection between the moon landing and the International Space Station. So it is estimated that about 600 million people on Earth were watching the moon landing, or about at that time a fifth of the world's population, which is insane. It's hard to think about that. And, the book even mentions viewing all over the world and people's impact. But one of the things that you don't hear is, well, it was only a few months after the moon landing that NASA was like, okay, what's next? And they had a whole bunch of proposals. Some of them worked out and some of them didn't. One of them was a lunar base. One of them was the shuttle program, which did in fact happen only about a decade later. And they also made mention of a 12-person space station. So the International Space Station does have its root all the way back in 1969, not too long after the Apollo 11. However, there was a lot of budget cuts made also right after Apollo 11, even after, the other Apollo missions, things got canceled and public interest started to wane for a while. Yes, there was a big jump around Apollo 13, and then if I'm gonna ask people about Apollo 16 or 17, not too many people can really place it. Though I will say Apollo 17 is the mission where the phrase "for all mankind" comes from, which is just lovely. We did end up with several space stations. It went back and forth between the USSR and the US. I'm not going to go into all these details, but you can see there was a number of space stations before we got to the International Space Station. The one that I grew up, hearing quite a bit about was Mir, which is insane because that was the first time that a few years in, both the US and NASA actually did work together. There's also some crazy stories about Mir and the collapse of the USSR, as they had one astronaut who was stuck up there because the USSR collapsed. And so technically there wasn't a space program to get him back. I believe there are other books on that story. It is a wild thing. And it was only deorbited back in 2001. But that leads us to the International Space Station. And here you can see it being assembled piece by piece, starting in about 2001. It has been populated continuously since 2000, which is wild. Now that it's 2026, knowing that there's always been humans on it for 26 years, it's quite a while. I will say, I'm not going to let this whole video play because it is a long video. They worked on the International Space Station for a long time. By the numbers, and they kind of reference this in the book, it's a lot bigger than you think. So it's 356 feet long. It orbits the Earth 16 times a day, or once every 90 minutes, only about 200 miles above us. So if you were to, go down I-90, it's, a couple hours. You would get to the space before you get to the Adirondacks, if you could, go straight up. And it's been going on for quite a while. There's been over 290 individuals across 26 countries. The longest single space flight was over 371 days. And we have had an astronaut be in space on the International Space Station for over 675 days, which is wild. It really is an international effort. I love the fact that so many countries were represented on the space station. Some of the politics that gets mentioned between between Russia and the US has happened, and really once you're in space, you really don't care because there's nothing they can do to you at that time. Are there things that could happen when you get back down to Earth? Sure. But when you're in space and you need to use a bathroom, you're going to use the bathroom. You know what? Just be glad. And I only make this joke after the last 2 weeks. Let's just be glad that the bathroom was fully working this entire book, unlike on Artemis. This gives you kind of an exploded view. It's one of my favorite views because there's so much of it. If anyone here is a fan of Lego, you can also do all of this with Lego. There is a really great ISS Lego kit. Except for it's really fragile. I've only brought it out once and it slightly fell apart.
Oh.
One of the things that I was very glad at the beginning of the book, and I hope people reference this, I should have actually bookmarked it, was that they actually showed all of the orbits around the Earth. And I wanted to kind of give you a better idea of why they said ascending and descending. We're not going to play this whole video, but I don't even need the sound on this. But you can see as it goes above the Earth, then below the Earth, above the Earth, and below the Earth. So you have ascending and descending. So that is how the path actually translates. I wanted to find a really good representation because it is really hard to understand how it goes across that path over the Earth as it continuously orbits. So this gives you an idea of why you can actually see different parts, why they just mention seeing different parts of the Earth as they go around. And on a similar vein, this was taken by astronaut Chris Hadfield, who was literally just across Lake Ontario from us. This is footage he took on the International Space Station. This is the view that they would have had from the International Space Station. Seeing lightning, you can see some storms, you can see nighttime. I believe in a moment you'll even be able to see the auroras, which I know is in this video. I should have bookmarked where it was. But you can actually tune into this live footage anytime you want. The International Space Station does have live views. So you can just find them on YouTube, which is absolutely lovely. As mentioned, I think this one is specifically just for nighttime. Otherwise, you saw it get brighter and brighter and brighter. Well, that's us hitting daylight. But this one is specifically for nighttime. I think there we are. So there's the auroras as seen from the International Space Station. So as you hear them talk about it in the book, that's fairly accurate. Honestly, we could just watch footage forever. The views are always stunning from up there. And there's a reason why they're always looking out. Yes?
I didn't understand, why are they doing like that? I guess I was thinking they would just be going around and around.
It's the best way to see as much of the Earth. By going through that orbit and moving on a slight tilt, that way you're not just seeing the same parts of Earth over and over again. Eventually you see the entire thing.
Into the whole thing.
Yeah.
And the Earth is moving.
Yes, everything is moving. Everything's continuous moving between the moon, the sun on its axis, the Earth on its axis, where we are in relationship to everything. The reason why there's a definite reason why it's called the cosmic ballet, is because everything is in continuous motion. One of the things that is fairly accurate in the book is that their schedules are, well, very well documented. They are given a schedule every day broken down in 5-minute increments. I want you to imagine having your daily schedule listed by someone else telling you exactly what to do and when to do it. And I mean, there are some times that are a bit, wider windows, like getting up. They give you a little leniency. There's a post-sleep segment, there's a breakfast segment. You can see there's little breaks in the day. The reason why there's breaks during the day and why they have evenings and weekends off, and I'll mention weekends in a little bit, is because if you were to look at the mental health status back on the Mir space station, well, it wasn't great. They actually noticed productivity really had issues. It led to mistakes happening. It led to a really bad bathroom issue happening. There's a reason why everything is the way it is when we deal with space. But these schedules, they are determined by so many people, between doctors, nutritionists. I mean, they do get to pick their food most of the time, which is lovely. But the science that they do that day, the photos that they requested, all of that comes from teams and teams of experts down at Mission Control. And to give you an idea, this is another view of a single day. So you can see the different astronauts here and what they are asked to do. So you can see a mixture of exercise, you can see a mixture of sleep or post-sleep, some of the science that they need to do mixed in with exercise, midday meal, with all of them having it together, pre-sleep time and sleep. We'll go into this. So sleeping, this is one of the most common questions, both by adults and kids, is how do astronauts sleep? And usually on the International Space Station, there's a number of sleep stations, including these lovely pods where you are basically in a sleeping bag. The difference is you have access for your arms to be out, because due to the lack of gravity, well, your arms don't need a place to go. They can just float there. It's also a lot easier to fall asleep reading a book when you have access to your hands. There are additional sleeping pods throughout the station as well, but you'll see a better view inside. In the morning, they're usually woken up. Admittedly, on the Artemis and on shuttle missions, astronauts were woken up by songs. I don't know if anyone picked up on some of the song choices that astronauts were woken up with during Artemis. NASA then created a playlist, but this actually goes back decades, all the way back to the Gemini era, where NASA would play music for them. They've had almost every major recording artist at some point have their music played to wake astronauts up, including some of them live, which is even wilder. I have found a 87-page paper from NASA with every song that's ever been played. So you can go through and really find out what they like listening to. So, they start their day, they get ready for the day, a lot of hygiene. You'll find lots of videos online about astronauts explaining how they brush their teeth, how they have their coffee or tea, what they like to have for breakfast. It's usually, waffles, egg, oatmeal. Toast is an absolute no-no because of all the crumbs. Crumbs are not a great thing in space. Then they start their day by talking with Mission Control, getting the assigned tasks for the day, and just kind of getting their general assignments. A lot of the day, honestly, the astronauts, unless they need a second pair of hands, They're off by themselves doing some sort of science experiment. Like I said, the International Space Station is the size of a football field. There's a lot of actual personal space, at least when there's only about 6 to 8 crew members. There have been times when there's been more during change-off times, when you have one crew that's there and needs to pass everything off onto the next crew. That's when it gets a little bit crowded, but besides that, they have a little bit more space. And on the daily, they have to, work on maintenance, they have to change filters, wipe down surfaces. It's actually really dirty up there. I want you to basically imagine a dorm that has been lived in for 25 years. Which some of the other issues with that I'll get to. But a lot of things just need updates. It needs cleaning. They do a lot of downlinks with schools, which I've had the lucky chance to help facilitate one of those at the museum a couple of years ago. They still have to do with the occasional spacewalk, lunch, exercise, and of course, lots of science. At the end of the day, they do a debriefing conference with Mission Control. They prepare anything that they need to get prepared for the next day and, just decompress. Astronauts love to just kind of hang out with each other. And they get their own quiet time as well. There are books up in space. At this point, they have really good internet up in space. So they'll watch movies, they'll watch sports, they'll listen to music. They do have to, get that exercise in. And then, they prepare for bed and do the whole thing again and again. Speaking of exercise, I did want to share, actually not exercise, this is how they get around. How many of you have seen the footage of astronauts just kind of floating there? Everyone, right? That's not necessarily the best for getting things done on a day-to-day basis. So one of the things that you'll see is people are wearing socks. They have really, really grippy socks to kind of help them stay in place, along with all of these bars. You'll see these blue bars on every surface in the International Space Station because every wall is a floor and a ceiling and your wall at the same time, so you can always rotate surfaces. And you need these bars to kind of like clip yourself in. So you can kind of see these nice little plates. There's Velcro. There's a lot of Velcro in space. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the science. They mentioned a little bit of it in the book. I won't go into too much detail, but there's some fun things from there. The ISS is often referred to as your orbiting laboratory. Honestly, the astronauts are just kind of there to act as scientists' hands and eyes and nose and anything else scientists may need because of all the experiments that can be done in space. Over 4,000 science experiments have been done over the last 24 years. There's a lot, the most amount of experiments admittedly are how do humans handle being in space. There's a lot on microbiology, gardens in space, DNA sequencing, a lot of photography taken back down to Earth, and of course, lots of astrophysics. There are 5 main modules that science is done in: Destiny, Columbus, Kibo, and Nakwa. And of course, the cupola, which is by far one of the best views from the International Space Station. There's a lot of different equipment up there. A lot of people love coming up with fun nicknames. There's everything from, microgravity, science glove box, the sun monitoring of external payload facility of Columbus are solar. And then my favorite, I am curious, is there any Star Trek fans in here? A couple. Because NASA is NASA, there is the Window Observation Research Facility, other known as WARF. NASA has way too much fun with acronyms. As it was brought up in the book, there is a NASA rodent hardware system in space. You can find videos of these mice in space and how they react to microgravity. I did decide not to share it because I don't know how people feel about seeing mice. But you can find this video footage out there along with all of the general experiments. But knowing how much it takes place in the book, I'm like, I have to at least show the hardware. So that is exactly what they were interacting with. Now, as we talk about photography, a lot of photography is mentioned in this book. And I wanted to tell you in a local connection, astronaut Don Preddy has a lot of photography experience, and he's worked with a lot of RIT professors and students. In fact, he was literally here 3 weeks ago, giving, I think he gave 2 different talks at RIT about his experiences in space. I am friends with one of the professors that he works with. The amount of photos that he has taken is insane. The amount of cameras on the International Space Station and camera equipment is in the dozens. And it keeps on being upgraded because as our cameras keep on getting better and better, well, we just keep on bringing up more cameras. Kind of taking a sidestep to Artemis, in the last day, they just started to release some of the photos taken by the literal phones and iPads that the astronauts were carrying around with them, in addition to the professional photo equipment. So as it was mentioned in the book, a lot of photos of storm systems take place from the International Space Station, and this has always been one of the side science missions. This specifically is Hurricane Ida from a number of years ago, and you can just see it building up intensity. The amount of storm, they see basically every large storm and are asked both by NASA and by NOAA to take these photos. To get into the weekend section, so as I mentioned, astronauts, not only do they have to work, they often get a chance to relax as well. The most common place that you can find an astronaut is probably in the cupola taking photos, or honestly just observing the Earth. One of my favorite examples of this is, yet again, astronaut Chris Hadfield. He performed a music video from the cupola. He did a modified version of David Bowie's Space Odyssey. Modified because he didn't want the astronaut to die at the end. Which I highly recommend watching that video. It is just insane. For which there's a lot of musical instruments in space as well. You'll find them playing music, watching movies and sports. There's ham radio, which I'll get to more in a moment. Astronauts have honestly done a lot of writing, have created poetry, have done a lot of art, all in space. Even locally, not on the International Space Station, but on the Inspiration 4X mission that took place in 2021, astronaut Dr. Simon Proctor was known for doing watercolors in space. Dr. Simon Proctor graduated high school from Fairport. She didn't grow up in the region. Her family traveled a lot as her father worked for NASA and hopped between bases, literally helped track Apollo from Guam. But I love the fact that her family spent a good couple of years in Fairport. And as I mentioned, a lot of them are on social media, a lot of them are doing videos, and they will often do crew dinners on Sunday nights. We'll also do big celebrations up there. Ham radio, it played quite a bit of in the book. It is incredible that this is still used. I've known a few local hams who have actually accessed and chatted with astronauts on the International Space Station. The equipment is all there, and I've heard of schools, I've heard of amateur radio clubs, all calling up. They only get about maybe a 5-minute window, and you do need to have the right weather conditions. So if it's, heavy rain or, how some of the last couple of evenings have been, not the best. But on a nice clear night, perfect. And I love the mention of food in space. There's actually a whole test kitchen that if you were to visit, I want to say Houston, You can go and actually help taste test food for astronauts because the food got way better. When you start sending astronauts into space for 6 to 9 months at a time, it kind of helps morale. So it's really improved. They rely heavily on space because your senses kind of disappear. Your sense of smell is horrendous in space. But that means you can basically overcome it with some really nice spicy foods. There's a lot of hot sauce in space. A lot of things come dehydrated and you can reheat with warm water. There are holiday meals, so you can get turkey on occasion. It's usually sent up in the latest refuel mission right nearest to the holidays. They are starting to grow fresh fruit and vegetables in space. They are very happy to do that. And of course, there has been plenty of pizza in space. This photo actually came as part of a Domino's promotion where they did delivery. It just took way more than 30 minutes. And I wanted to share, these are some of the first peppers that were grown in space. Those are pretty good size. Like that's a decent garden haul. So they are starting to get better and better about growing food on the International Space Station. I also wanted to mention, because yet again, the bathrooms are mentioned in the book, and this, as someone who works at the museum and I go out and talk about space, this is always one of the first questions. It's about the bathrooms. There's also, with the bathrooms, there is this phrase, today's coffee is tomorrow's coffee. And that is because of the water recirculation system on the International Space Station. What's a bit terrible is that we have that exact same sign, the coffee sign, not the bathroom sign, in the planetarium kitchen right next to the coffee maker. But, you know, a lot of NASA folks have a great sense of humor, and so this is an official logo that you can find on the International Space Station in some of the bathrooms. I'm not going to go into all of this, but this just gives you a general idea of how complicated the bathrooms are. Admittedly, they have gotten better, and with Artemis, I know the bathrooms were talked about quite a bit with breaking. The reason why it's fascinating is it's the first time that we've had a bathroom on a mission to the moon. Originally, they just wore a lot of diapers on those trips, and this is a new improvement. Hopefully, it gets fixed before the next crewed mission. And I will say this is the new NASA space toilet. They've kept on improving them. Exercising, admittedly, they didn't have as much exercising in the book until the very, very end, which I found interesting. Because about 2 to 3 hours of every astronaut's day is dedicated to exercising. And that is due to the bone loss that happens when you're in 0G for a long period of time. With Artemis, they didn't really worry about it because that was just a 10-day trip. When it comes to months and months at a time, it can really take a toll on the human body. All of this is still being studied. I mean, we've only been up there for 25, 26 years, at least with the International Space Station, and so we're still trying to find new ways to keep humans healthy in 0G. You can kind of see with the treadmill, they're being forced down. The weight lift system is really tricky, as is the bike. I do also want to bring up the smell. As I said earlier, it's kind of like a college dorm that hasn't really been deep cleaned in 26 years. And I wanted to include this top quote because, A, it happened very, very recently. It's, when you open the hatch to the space station, it's like a punch to the face. It's a combination of locker room, garbage, and BO. There's some things that you don't quite hear about on the International Space Station is the smell and the noise. The reason I mentioned the noise is I want you to imagine listening to a vacuum 24/7 for months at a time. It is very loud on the International Space Station. And that's because all the machines need to continuously keep running. It's also the fact that all those machines were built about 30 years ago and don't have as much noise dampening. Now, this kind of gets to the heart of the book and some of the recent quotes from the Artemis mission. And that is the overview effect, which was coined by author and researcher Frank White. It's that cognitive shift that astronauts experience as they see the entirety of the Earth for the first time. And it really kind of changes your point of view. You hear a lot of poetry about this, a lot of just lyrical language looking down at the Earth. I think about Carl Sagan in the book and in the movie Contact about needing a poet to go up in order to explain the view. Because it really is this jaw-breaking view. There are no lines. You can see the Sahara, you can see the mountains, you can see the oceans, every storm. It is incredible. It is hard to put into words. And I ended up going with Michael Collins, I should have fixed that last name, saying how it's home and it's fragile. And we heard those exact words echoed recently with Artemis. So this one was during the last mission to the moon, which was Apollo 17 in December of 1972. So that was the last time that we actually landed on the moon and then came back. I do want to point out, not every astronaut feels the overview effect in the long term. I still heavily believe in the overview effect, but when you see astronauts fight with each other, there's some issues that pop up. But in general, everyone tends to experience this. Now for Artemis 2, this is wild. That, in the beginning of the book, they mentioned that trip to the moon. I will say the difference is, well, we didn't land on the moon this time, and they kind of don't say which Artemis took place. So it could be one of the upcoming Artemis missions. We just went around it. So the timing, very close. As of the moment, Artemis 3 was originally supposed to be our trip back to the moon and actually land on it. Due to taking additional safety precautions, they decided to let's actually test a few more things in space and push it out to Artemis 4. So as of the current moment, it's going to take place in 2028. I'm willing to say it's probably going to actually take place in 2029. Realistically, a lot of NASA launches are delayed. This actually happened with Apollo. It happened with Artemis. Artemis 1 was supposed to take place in, I want to say the fall of 2024 originally, and then it got delayed over a year. So it's one of those, we've been working towards these things. Space takes time. And I would rather they take time instead of something going wrong. What I did love, I kind of wish it was in the book, was that first chat between the International Space Station and Artemis. I call it Orion here, because honestly, we've never had that happen before. For the first time in history, we had a discussion between folks going off to the moon and a space station. Because if you remember my timeline here, last time we went to the moon was December of '72. We didn't have a space station at that time. We didn't really have this ship-to-ship communication that we could have worked on. And so this happened for the first time. And if you can watch the video, it's about a 12-minute discussion between the two ships. It was a bit weird because they weren't used to such a long delay. There was about a 2.5-second delay between the International Space Station talking down to Earth and then that signal going all the way back up to the Orion ship. Having them talk is, honestly, if you hear the discussion, it's really funny. Half the discussion is about what they ate today and what they felt the food tasted like. for which I believe 3 of the crew on the Orion have been to the International Space Station before, with one of them never been to space before, for which their first trip to space being a trip to the moon is insane. That's basically saying, I've never been on a roller coaster before, and then all of a sudden you go to Darien Lake and you go on the Superman, going 90 miles per hour. One of the other subjects that I wanted to bring up is space and death, specifically death of a family member, since a good chunk of the book covers that very topic. And I didn't know this, but there have actually been 3 astronauts who have lost their parents while in space before, which I honestly did not know. One of them was for one of the USSR cosmonauts, which they didn't tell him till he landed. And then I believe the other 2 were on either the shuttle or the ISS. And this immediately came to mind as I was watching live, and I'll skip a few minutes. I'm wondering if people, I'll actually turn this up.
This journey in our close-knit.
Did people watch the announcement of Crater Carol? Did everyone hear about it? Okay. So as they went around the moon and started looking down, they had the ability to name a few things. One of them they named Ingenuity after the crew in the mission. The other one they named after Commander Weissman's late wife, who passed away just a few years ago. And you can see that same hug and that same deep love for each other here that you saw in the book. And this mirrors just perfectly. You'll see it in a sec.
And we would like to call it Carol. And you spell that C-A-R-R-O-L-L.
Integrity and Carol Crater, loud and clear. Thank you.
But that is one of the most powerful parts of the entire mission, I have to say. I was watching this live with my daughter at the time, and yeah, I honestly had to stop what I was doing. But honestly, favorite part of the mission. Honestly, I want to say that moment encapsulates this entire book. Just between, a bit of discovery, a bit of inspiration, and just a lot of love. To kind of round this whole thing out, there are currently 10 humans in space, those still left on the International Space Station. I love pointing out Jessica Meir, who worked with Christina Cook very closely and had the first all-woman spacewalk, and hearing them chat in between the 2 vehicles was just lovely. You can track, admittedly this is from a few weeks ago, when the International Space Station went over Rochester several times. You can actually find this on apps, you can find this on websites, really good info. And there's lots of different viewings, websites. It's kind of mentioned at the end of the book, but there is a planned ending for the International Space Station, or at least it's currently being discussed. There's a lot of issues, there's a lot of leaks. There's a lot of questions about what to do with it, and like how to crash it down to Earth. There's no safe way that we could just bring the whole thing down, unfortunately, and use parts. But you know, there's lots of conversations going on. The plan is to deorbit it in the 2030s. I do need to point out, I should have caught this. One of these bullet points at the bottom half is actually now canceled, which is the Lunar Gateway program, where there was going to be an orbiting space station around the moon. And as of maybe a month ago, they canceled that program. To kind of round this all out, there's an astronaut exhibit at the RMSE, which is replicating life on the International Space Station. That's going to be there now through May 3rd, so that's just wrapping up. I forgot to include a slide on it. If you're looking for other media to be inspired about space, the RPO is doing their space concert in a week. Yes, in a week, which is going to be absolutely lovely. And there are so many good books about life in space. One by Chris, I included, Chris Hadfield. Packing for Mars by Mary Roach has a lot of funny stories about what has happened in space. I can't go wrong with Carl Sagan. There's been a number of biographies out there. And if you're looking for something in the fiction world, the Calculating Stars and the whole Lady Astronaut series is one of my personal favorites. I will inhale those books repeatedly, but wanted to end with that. And with that, I would like to open it up for questions.
Oh, yeah, I'm coming with the mic.
I have two health-related questions.
Yes.
One is the mission before this, when they had to go up and retrieve an ill astronaut.
Yes.
And he couldn't talk. Apparently it came out. Have they related that to space, or was that an idiosyncratic problem? Or we don't know.
They haven't shared. Like any of his health diagnosis, which is really unfortunate. I'm very curious, as is everyone, but they haven't really announced much.
Is there long-term health follow-up of astronauts who've been there a long? I was wondering about the hearing. If you have to listen to a vacuum for that long, what does that do to your hearing?
About the same as any rock performer.
Yes.
So it goes a little. The bigger impact is actually on their eyes, where eyesight is known for becoming worse after spending a long amount of time in space. And that's just because of the effects of microgravity on your eyes not being able to, align correctly.
Good afternoon, guys. I didn't know I was going to be here in this room today until I walked in the library. I just thought that this was interesting, so thank you for being informative. I am a local artist in Rochester, New York, with poetry. I'm a poet, and I'm a painter, and that kind of like inspired me to hear that they paint watercolors and or write poetry, and I'm just trying to find videos on any artist that may have written poetry while in space and or painted while in space, because I'm going to paint a picture. It inspired me today.
Start with Dr. Cyan Proctor. That's the first one I would go with, and then I would honestly have to look it up. Okay. I just know that they have a lot of tools in space for painting, for coloring. I mean, there's colored pencils up there. It's, just about every form of artistic medium has been done up there.
Two technical questions. One had to do with watercolor, because I did go to some videos where they showed about brushing their teeth and worried that they don't want droplets of water that just bounce around. So watercolor, I do wonder how they do that, and haircuts. It seems like that would be a real liability when the hair will fly off to space.
It is. I'll start with the haircuts and then go back to the watercolors. There's actually video. You can watch astronauts get haircuts. They basically need a vacuum. They have a vacuum tube right by it. That way they can immediately cut it. And it's very interesting. I'm trying to think if there's been any long-term studies on hair, because those with longer hair, because of lack of gravity, it just generally stays up. Mm-hmm. And you can see a lot of videos and photos of this. How they scrub their hair is usually with like a dry shampoo. They do have, shower facilities where they can kind of like rinse it out. Well, I shouldn't say shower. They have squirt bottles of water. There's a lot of squirt bottles of water, and they use some of that same stuff for watercolors. Is having a little bit of water and it's absorbed by the paintbrush, and you can dip in. They have a lot of people trying to figure out all these little idiosyncrasies with anything that they want to do for fun. One of my favorite fun facts is that they've actually recreated the International Space Station with Lego on the International Space Station. And not with the current kit, they did it with all sorts of regular bricks. And the tricky bit about that is, well, you know how when you build a Lego set here on Earth, at least the Lego can stay on the table? Well, you have a bit of a different issue in space. And so they have to build it inside a box while wearing gloves to keep everything contained.
Thanks for the talk. So I really had a question more about why the emphasis on human-powered spaceflight, because it seems like there's so much more expense and so much more danger, and yet we have machines that could probably do the same work. Is it really just that the public will support a manned space program versus an unmanned space program?
It depends on what we're working on, because some things human eyes are better, and we can change much quicker on a dime. The amount of time it takes to program a robot, say I think about the Mars rovers, the amount of time it takes for them to do a little bit of work compared to a human, which could, take input and immediately get to that work very quickly, is a massive time difference. When it comes to long periods of time, yes, sometimes it's worth having more robots. For shorter periods of time, there's a lot that we can still do, and we can handle the unknowns. There was a lot of talk about risk on the Orion mission by all of the astronauts about accepting that risk and how it's needed at times so that they can do so many more things. A lot of those science experiments would be very, very difficult to do without, hands as well. Humans still have a lot of, tools and abilities that robots don't have yet.
I'm glad someone else brought up money before I did, because I find it's like, I'm fascinated by all this. I think it's all very interesting, but I also have a kid in Brighton School District that is laying off TAs next year because they don't have any money.
Yes.
And it's just such a hard thing in my head sometimes to balance. Like, I love that we're discovering all this stuff in these pictures and it gets you so emotional, but how much is too much money to spend on, how much is it helping? I don't know. I just have a hard time with billions of dollars.
Yes. I will say the amount of money that NASA spends is actually a lot lower these days. During the height of the Apollo era, it was, maybe 4 to 5% of the overall GDP.
Wow.
Yeah, it was insane during the height of the Apollo era. Now it's like 0.0001%. As much money as you think we're spending, we have cut way back. And there's actually been a lot of things that we've learned, especially from the International Space Station. There's been a lot of tools developed to deal with radiation, which has actually helped out a lot with cancer research. There's a lot of cancer research that's done on the space station. There's a lot of tools and tech. The ability for us to look down and see storms coming is incredible and has actually saved lives. Yeah, for me, it's not a zero-sum game when you think about space and what we should be doing, but we should be, in general, more money to education. As someone who works at a museum, I am 1,000% in more support for education.
light.
Mm-hmm.
Is that actually lights at nighttime in cities?
Yep. Light pollution's really terrible here on Earth. One of the other things that I tend to do is I do a lot with telescopes. I've done a lot of telescope evenings around Rochester, and light pollution is really rough right now. We've lost a lot of the night sky. Honestly, I could do a whole nother talk about the night sky and how we've been losing it and the impact on animals. We've unfortunately lost a lot of the night sky of being able to see all the stars that we were once able to see. As someone who grew up locally in Henrietta on the edge of Rush, I remember seeing a lot more stars at night compared to what I can now see with my daughter here in Rochester. But yes, all of those lights that we saw were lights mostly from larger cities.
We probably have time for one more question or comment. Does anyone want to make? Yeah,
It's just a comment.
sure.
To your point that one of the things they talked about quite a bit in the book was what it looked like by day. By day, there was no, it looked like there were no humans on the earth at all. There was no light pollution, and it was just light, but there was no differentiation. Otherwise, it just looked like it was an unoccupied time.
That does remind me of one of the photos that came out of Orion that I absolutely love, and you can see it sometimes during a new moon, and that's when the moon is slightly lit up based off of the Earth, and that's called Earthshine, because the Earth reflects a lot of light as well, and even to the point of lighting up the moon a little bit.
Thank you so much, Dan. This was fantastic. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And if you are interested in any of the titles that Dan